Talking to myself again.
Hi and welcome to NUFC Matters, and we've started a new programme. It's called Dream Team, where we'll get some of our regulars on who are going to talk about their dream Newcastle United team and manager. And thought it was great to kick this off with Mitch, who's been involved with the show from the start. Hi Mitch, how are you?
I'm alright, mate. All the better for today's result and everything's good, mate.
Yeah, we're recording this today when Newcastle have managed to get a win against West Brom and edge further away from any relegation battle. So we're all good, all happy and ready to go. And great team you've picked here, Mitch. So if you want to start by telling us who you've picked as your goalkeeper.
Pav. And as you'll see when I get to the bench, it wasn't an easy decision for me. This team's been picked not just about how good a player is, but also about what it means to me. I think your best 11 as a football fan, you're shaped by your experiences at different times in your life. And certain players may not be the best players in the world or the most outstanding, but they mean a lot to you. And I think these things are always so super personal, or they should be. You know, if they weren't, we'd just trot out the bland same 11 that everybody would time and time again. So we'll start with Pav. Do you know what? Pav was something different. When he arrived at the club, he kind of was the first sweeper keeper. You know, he's the first keeper who would come out and play with his feet. And he got caught out a couple of times and got lots of criticism for it, which in the way I guess a modern keeper wouldn't, probably. And the other thing you've got to look at is the amount of times he won his place back. They'd bring other keepers in and he'd come back. And they'd bring other keepers in and he'd get a chance and he would keep the shirt. And then he left the club and then he came back and then won the place back again, you know. And I think that says about as much about the man as it does about his ability as a footballer or a goalkeeper. That determination and the connection he always had with the club. And I know you know that probably more than many people.
Yeah. He was a lovely guy, man.
I know there's personal things there for you, but for me, as a lad watching him from the Gallagher, when he first came into the team, he was the kind of keeper I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
You know, this was a relatively new concept to English football, to have a keeper who was prepared to come out and play the ball with his feet. You know, it just wasn't a done thing. And so for me, on all of that, time and again, personal experience through having had the chance to have a little bit of time with him, courtesy of yourself, you know, I can't not have him in my 11 as my keeper. And I thought really long and hard about it. And I hear lots of things about keepers at the minute, you know. Oh, well, this one's a good shot stopper. Well, I'm sorry, if you're a top flight goalkeeper, certainly if you're a Premier League goalkeeper, you've got to be a good shot stopper. That's your business. I think the keepers that merit something more have something different about them. You know, my all-time number one keeper, and it sticks in me craw to say this, Schmeichel. Schmeichel had something different about him. He as much won Man United that title over us as Cantona did. I've never seen a keeper bully his back four the way he could. I've never seen a keeper make some ridiculous saves the way he could. And you know, it all comes down to personal experience and personal favourites. But for me, Pav, he wasn't just a good shot stopper. He was the first sweeper keeper, and he was something special for me in my time following this club.
Yeah, he was a lovely guy, got the area, got the football club, and as you say, got off to a rough start. I mean, I remember him wearing tracksuit bottoms. You know, he was he was a typical continental goalkeeper, wasn't he?
Continental keeper, yes.
And he was flapping at the ball as well, wasn't he? Flapping instead of catching.
he would punch and not catch. And again, that was alien to us.
Yeah.
But like, what's this kid doing? Has he got no balls? Can he not bother with it or whatever? And it was just something so different.
Yeah.
I mean, was it somewhere like Bannock Strawberry came from, something like
That's
that?
right.
Yeah, yeah, you know, and like again, it was just like Czech league. Who's this kid? What's he got about him? And for me, the amount of times he came back, he was like Rocky. He would return every time, and that says a lot about him. So for me, that's my keeper.
Yeah, no, good stuff. You're right back then.
Barry Venison. In all, and again, a number of layers with Barry Venison coming in as somebody who, and I don't think he's ever come out and said, is he black and white or red and white? He's a lad from Stanley. I lived in Iveston near Concert for a little while before I came out over here. And you talk to lads there, and there's a lot of people there still argue if he's red and white or black and white. He made his name at Sunderland. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, I had mates who went on and played at Sunderland at youth and first team level. So, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean a thing. And then he went to Liverpool and just about won everything. And we got him technically at what should have been the tail end of his career, and he actually blossomed. He ended up getting England caps and things like that. And he got an England cap in midfield, not a right back, which showed how he developed as a player. You know, he could fill a centre back role, he could fill a right back role, but his role in that team that took us up and then kept us up and more. And his passion for it, and his love for it. And then after I took over Toon Talk Radio with Andrew from you, we got Barry on once on there, and we had him on when we did the show at Capital Radio in Abu Dhabi out here. When we had him on over here, we were supposed to be on for half an hour. We did 2.5 hours with him straight. Honest, straight 2.5 hours, and it was gold. It was like sort of radio gold. You know, it was the kind of stuff you can't stop this. You know, I'm sitting yakking to him while Andrew's telling some of the other guests, "No, we're not going to have you on tonight," actually, because it was obvious we were just going to go and go and go. And he can tell tales. He's a raconteur and a half, but a really genuinely nice guy. And football, he knows his football inside out. But as a player, filling that right back role under Keegan, I can't think of any other right fullback that, to me, meant so much about playing that role and wearing the shirt. And so he's got to be in. He's got to be in. And I've dropped him in at right back, I think, for reasons that people will see about why I put him there.
Yeah, great player. Big reason why Newcastle did so well in those early days under Kevin Keegan as well. But yeah, good shout for right back. Left back.
Left back. Who have I got in left back again? Frank Clark. And of my 11, this is the only one who I never actually saw play in a black and white shirt. And I was either going to go with him or Alan Kennedy. And I went with him because of one reason, Face Cup. And I was lucky enough to get to know the lads at the Face Club, the people who have kept in contact with all the players. I did a few trips to them. A wonderful trip down to Norwich to see Ollie Burton. An amazing trip down to Manchester area to see Wyn Davis and a number of others. And I was lucky enough to get to meet Frank and spend some time with Frank, and a humble guy and a lovely guy, done so much in football, massive reputation. And there's that picture of him tackling Pelé, you know, which just shows how, you know, that guy could play football and was hard and was respected by attackers of all qualities. And left back's a strange position for Newcastle United. Since Clark and Kennedy, it's almost become a scapegoat position. You think of how many left backs, particularly in the 80s, got pelters off of our crowd. You know, Stimpson, Sweeney, And we can go on and on and on about left backs who got hammered. Bez got hammered sometimes. I mean, Beresford, you've got to remember, was playing behind Ginola. He was playing behind Robert. He got no protective cover whatsoever for most of his time as a left fullback who was also an attacking left fullback. And he was getting no help at all. And then people would lay into him, well, where was Beresford? Well, Beresford was trying to do two jobs, you know. And as a position, it's become a tough gig at Newcastle United, I think, left back. And Frank Clark was the exact opposite of that. What a hard man, hard tackler, great defender. But actually, when you get time to spend with him, humble guy as well. Really nice guy. And I know people have sort of suggested he didn't get on with everybody else in the team, what have you, and that's totally the opposite of what I've seen in that company and spending time in that company. And yeah, it's got to be Frank Clark.
Yeah, good shout, mate. And somebody I didn't see play either, but I mean, he went on from Newcastle to have such a fantastic career. But yeah, good selection again, mate. So centre halves now.
Centre halves. I've gone a bit chalk and cheese at centre half. Start with Jonathan Woodgate, who for me is genuinely, people use the term Rolls Royce defender, dear me, and then some. Genuinely the best defender I've ever seen play in a black and white shirt. That lad could do everything as a centre back and made it look easy. And I love players who make the game look easy, because you know they've always got that extra half a yard. You know they've always got that extra second on the ball. And he was one of those. I mean, the amount of top-class strikers he genuinely took in his back pocket with his tic-tacs and his car keys. You know, if it wasn't for his injury record, and I know there's things behind that, and I'm aware of things that are behind his injury record, which is such a shame, because there's nothing he personally can do about that. But he was the classiest defender I think I've ever seen play, certainly in a black and white shirt. He always looked comfortable, never looked flustered. I remember a game against Arsenal where Thierry Henry was on fire coming into the game, and he just took Thierry Henry up and rolled him away, had him under his arm like a bit of carpet, and away you go. You know, and you look at it and you think, wow, this guy's just different class. And he was different class. He used it. As a footballer, I don't think I've seen a centre-back of his quality ever in a black and white shirt. And then for the other centre-back, I was torn between two. And the first one I was thinking of was Benny Christensen, because again, he's one of my players from my era, growing up watching the game. You know, one of my centre-backs. And another player who, when he was on the ball, made everything look easy. And I just love players who glide across the pitch like he did. Everything was straightforward. Never seemed flustered. Everything was great, straightforward. But
he used to have a weird running style. Sorry to interrupt you, but he had a weird running style, didn't he? He was a bit like Foghorn Leghorn. He used to like lead with his his head and run in that I don't know.
The word is languid. You just didn't know how quick he was going. If he was going 200 miles an hour or 3 miles an hour, he would look the same. He did have it. He used to tuck his hands back as well, didn't he? You know, there's just something different about him. But I ended up going with Brian Kilcline. Brian Kilcline, for me, to this day, is still, and you will never budge me on this, you can chuck us as many arguments as you like, Kevin Keegan's best value pound-for-pound signing was Brian Kilcline. Full stop. End. And I won't have anything else said against that. That season, when he came in, and we were going down to the old third division. There's no doubt about that. And he recognised the need that we needed somebody old school, a barker, a shouter, a bollocker, an organiser, a kicker. Somebody horrible. And he found the most applicable signing he possibly could And I think what was it, something like 300,000 we got him for? Was it maybe that it wasn't even that? Maybe you know, it was next to nothing really in the modern game. Totally next to nothing. But without him, we wouldn't have stayed up, and without him, we wouldn't have built the platform we built in the first 10 games of the season after, where we went unbeaten. I think it was the first 10 or 11, and then we had that debacle at home against Grimsby, I think it was. But Kilcline was the foundation for that as well. I also know from talking to other people around the club, he made such a difference to young defenders coming through, and even defenders who we thought were more experienced, people like Kevin Scott and Steve Howie, became better defenders because of his presence and things they picked up off him. You know, and again, somebody who, if you meet off the pitch, comes across as a little eccentric, because he is. Let's be honest. But he cares a lot about Newcastle United, and he got Newcastle United. And I think his time at Newcastle United he enjoyed just as much at Coventry, where he's a club legend there. He left the FA Cup for them, you know. But I think he views his time at Newcastle United with equal levels of awe. But also, you know what? When we got promoted and he knew his time was done and he was going to be looked by and passed over, but he wanted to still play, he had the absolute brave honesty to turn around to Keegan and say, I'd like to go because I want to play still, and I know I'm not going to play here. And I think that's a level of honesty you don't get out of many players, because many players would be happy to sit on a paycheck now and just see a season out in the reserves and do naff all and get their money and go home and piss about on their PlayStations, you know. And Kilcline wasn't about that. He wanted to play. He wanted to see his career out. And I'm forever grateful for what he brought. You know, that day at Leicester when we stayed up, huge. But then the platform he helped build, and make no mistake about it, he helped build that platform for the following season when everything became the sky's the limit. And he was still involved, and we got promoted, and then he had the grace to bow out with genuine grace, you know. And I'll be forever grateful to him for that. And again, it's a very personal opinion of a player who I have a very high regard and respect for. And I think him alongside Woodgate as a pair in that pomp would have been horrible as a centre forward. You can go get against one and get kicked to bits, or you can go against the other and just have you be wrapped into his pocket. You choose which hill you want to die on, because you're not going to get past either.
Yeah, amazing player, great servant to the club, and again, as you say, pound for pound, you know, a great signing. Interesting that though, yeah, I can see why you'd get a lot of people would probably say Rob Lee was another one in that kind of bracket, pound for pound.
That's the argument I constantly have with people. They're the two players that come up with. But
I agree.
For me, you'll never shake the young killer.
I would agree, mate. And I mean, look, he was part and parcel of the reason we stayed up. But you know, a lot of people remember the promotion, you know, but people tend to forget we nearly went down to Division 3, and it was, you know, that was every much as important that season, staying up, and you know, Killer was part of all of that. But yeah, good stuff, mate. So the team looking strong at the back. Who's next?
We're going to midfield, and I'm going with a midfield diamond, because I'm a sucker for a diamond formation, and you can blame AC Milan in the 80s for that. So it's sitting at the base of the diamond. Again, this is a super personal one, and I'm happy to go into why. I've stuck Roy Aitken at the base of the diamond. Roy Aitken is my captain. He was the captain when I was sort of in my teens, following the club home and away, earning my stripes properly, as it were, and that's my captain. And what a signing at the time again. Unlikely signing to bring the captain of Scotland to the club when we're in the second division, not the first division, and he was happy to come. But also I know he settled in the region very well. And this is where it gets bizarrely personal. His wife is a dental nurse, and she used to work with a consultant who used to teach me at the dental hospital in Newcastle. But then I came to Dubai about 9 years ago, and I was sitting, at the time I worked in a surgery in downtown, Dubai, and I saw this new patient booked in with a medical history filled out and the details on. And I walked through the waiting room and I thought, that's Roy Aitken. And I don't get giddy easily or starstruck. You know, I mean, I've been out here, I've treated sheikhs, I've treated royalty from other countries, I've treated Hollywood film stars, I've treated football players from other clubs. And one of the first time I went a bit like, was Roy Aitken. Roy Aitken was sitting in my waiting room, and I went all like sort of gooey, and it really like threw us, because my captain was out there, and he became. I'm sure he won't mind me saying he became a patient, but he also became more than a patient. He became a good friend out there. Super nice guy. When you get to know him, he was at the time he was sporting director at Al Ahly club, which is now Al Ahly Al Shabab Dubai, because they merged some clubs together after Roy left Al Ahly. He took me to some Al Ahly games in the Gulf League. He took us to a Asian Champions League semi-final against Al Hilal of Saudi, and he got me tickets for, and that was one of the most amazing football experiences I've ever had. I also learned he was a big patron of animal welfare charities out here, which is a hard gig. I can tell you that from, again, personal experience. My missus used to run one, and it's bloody hard. Animal welfare out here is a hard gig. And I got to meet his missus again, and that was when we worked out how she was working with a consultant when I was the student at the dental hospital. And such a lovely man, and still now he keeps in touch. I've got an open offer to go to. I think he's an ambassador for Celtic now, and I've got an open offer to go to Celtic with him at any time I'm back. What an absolutely, genuinely lovely guy that man is, and I've got all the time in the world for him. And he's my captain, and he would be my captain in this team, and he's got to be in this team. Simple as that.
Fantastic, good stuff. Next up then, going into your midfield now.
Okay, right midfield, Robert Lee. That was one of the easiest picks in the 11. Next up for me after Keller for pound, Keegan's best sign. You know, the progression he made from an out and out right winger to a central midfielder, to an England international through his time at the club. And I don't think you'd be able to place in anybody's best 11 at all. He developed into a player who genuinely could and did do everything. His goal against Chelsea at Wembley will live long in my memory is the noise that we genuinely nearly took the roof off at Old Wembley. We made that old ground shake when he scored that goal, and I just wish he could have been part of an 11 along with Speed and Shearer, for example, to break the duck from 1969, because by God he deserves it. And again, another guy, and you know this from having spent time with him, really nice guy. You know, we've been lucky enough to have him on the radio out here a couple of times as well, and he gives frank and honest interviews and honest answers. He doesn't shirk anything, and just is a really nice guy to be around. And so, but also what a player, and develop as a player, like I say, in his time at the club. And I love to see players who develop and become much more than the individual was signed, because he really was genuinely not quite a winger, but certainly an out-and-out right midfielder when we signed him. And then he became an England international in centre midfield, and he was almost a complete centre midfielder. He could do everything if he wanted.
Yeah, top man, top player, and somebody who bleeds black and white, no doubt about that. Who's next in your midfield selection?
We'll go left midfield, and I had a real struggle with this, because you know I love a maverick. You know I love somebody who has a bit of Robin Friday in them, somebody who really just doesn't give a care. And And I was torn between two in the end, between Laurent Robert, who I love his gunslinger style. I love the way he used to play, the free kicks he used to hit. But then, for me, if you want a completeness in a midfield diamond, it's got to be Ginola. Left foot, right foot, could do everything. Suave, good looking, and everything else that you hate, but you love them all the same. An amazing player on his day. Scapegoated out of France, and we got a bargain when we picked him up off of PSG because of this whole fell foul of Cantona's finger pointing from a French World Cup qualifier that he really wasn't to blame for. Cantona was as much to blame as anybody else. But Ginola got fingering, and his career in France was screwed, let alone his international career. So we got him for next to out. And the rest is history. We had 2.5 seasons of pure Gallic genius. And the moment with him that stands out for me, there's two. Goal against Man United where he turned Gary Neville like an idiot and then hit the shot in the top corner. And the goal against Ferencváros in the UEFA Cup, which I was looking right behind. To get that from a corner, to control it on your thigh, one thigh, two thigh, volley. And everybody in the stadium knew it was in the minute it left his foot. It was one of those, yep, that's a goal. He was the provider of such moments of genius. And yes, you had to take the inadequacies in his game, is the fact he would sometimes go AWOL, the fact he certainly wasn't always the best at helping out the left back. Like I say, Bez got some penalties, mainly because he was trying to cover two players, not one, because I was off pirouetting in the centre circle, But I think you've got to find a room for somebody like that in your team. You've got to find a way to accommodate it. To overuse certain terms, you've got to find a player who can express himself. You've got to find a player who is not frightened to do the unusual, the less obvious. You need that X factor in your team. And who better than Ginola, who I wish we'd had him a little longer. I wish that Dalglish had been able to keep the team he inherited together a bit longer. I would love to have seen Ginola under Sir Bobby. I think he would have been a different beast of game. But we didn't get that. But we did get 2 and a bit years of just pure genius and joy. Joy. And you need to play football with joy. It needs to be something happy. And so for me, it's got to be Ginola on the left.
Yeah, don't think you'll get any arguments with me on that either. Next up then.
Point of the diamond, Peter Beardsley. I've got to find a way to play Pedro in this team. And when you see me front two, you'll understand why I've tucked him there. And he could play in midfield, and indeed did play in midfield for Keegan in particular quite well. He always was, and I think nearly every strike partner he's had from Andy Cole to Gary Lineker and beyond say they used to take joy out of his joy of creating goals. And he definitely used to like to create goals as much as he did score them. And I think in that sort of advanced midfield role, it's perfect for Pedro because he can drop off and create havoc. But he used to put enough work rate in to justify a place in midfield, to be fair. Close to one of the best players I've ever seen in a black and white shirt. If his first time here was a revelation, his second time here was an expansion. He became so much more of a complete player for me under Keegan than he was when he was here the first time, because he was able to play a deeper role on occasion, because he'd taken all of the experience from being away from Newcastle at different teams and then come back and just did so much more for the team. And so I think in the 11 I'm picking, playing off of the front two in that kind of role, I think it's ideal for him, and I think he would have excelled in that role. But a player who on his day again, could do everything. He could and did score spectacular goals. But some of the goals he made, dear me, were even better. The amount of goals he put on a plate for Andy Cole when he was breaking records was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, you know?
Yeah, fascinating player. Still the best player I've ever seen in a black and white shirt, Mitch. No doubt about it. And I can see why he's in your team. So, who's next?
Okay, front two. There's only one player for the number 9, and that's Alan Shearer. You know, we can talk about strikers in a black and white shirt. The number 9 has a long track record of having amazing people playing that position and amazing goal scorers playing that position. But for me, Alan genuinely was the most complete number 9 I've ever watched in a black and white shirt. And I think the thing that stands out for me with him is you can see two distinct phases to his career. One, when we first got him from Blackburn, and then after he had that horrendous ankle injury, and he came back from that, he was lacking a little bit of pace and acceleration, and he changed his game. He had the intelligence and the ability to change how he played a little bit. And so we got something different, but something better in some ways out of him because he was able to do that. I don't think you'll ever see anybody else like that in a black and white shirt ever again, because I don't think anybody in modern football will stay at the club that long anymore. And the fact he's one of us makes a massive, massive difference. The Geordie number 9 thing, I know it's a little bit of a misnomer about we want a team of Geordies and blah blah blah, but it matters here to us. To stand on, you know, I'm lucky enough to have stood on the terrace and watched Tony Lomas score. Somebody I went to school with, somebody who, you know, was a mate of mine. We were playing football against each other in Wallsend for the 2 different Wallsend teams. He was at the boys' club, I was at High Farm. And somebody I knew really, really well. To have the joy of watching your mate score in the number 9 shirt, in a black and white shirt, is just ridiculous. Can't express it. But he was one of us, and to see him do it, albeit at a later stage, you know, he didn't come through the youth. He came through the youth at Southampton, and I know there's this apocryphal tale about him playing in goal and what have you, trials, and I think that's a bit of a misnomer. But that's by the by. We certainly missed out there, but by God, we made up for it by paying to bring him back. And some of the goals he scored, you know, you look at Shearer's best goals, you're talking about a hell of a lot of good goals there. Not a small amount. A lot of really, really good goals. And joy. And again, somebody like Rob Lee, I would have loved to have seen lift a bit of silverware. Not just for us, but for them.
Yeah, nobody else for the number 9 shirt for me either. So quite a similar 11 I would have. Who's next then?
Well, there's only one other player for me, Kevin Keegan. Have him in the lineup that day. He came and his debut against QPR and being squished up against the bloody fence like a bloody melon going through a dicer. But you wouldn't have it any other way. Somebody who got the club as a player, got the club as a manager, who cares to this day about the club dearly, twice came and changed the direction the club was going in. First as a player, get back up as part of a team that was all right, but it ended up punching way above their weight because of his presence. And then to come back as a manager and do what he did as a manager, you know, it was like second time round. And it was just a shame under the current owner that the third time round was a little bit of a false start, to make an understatement. But you can't not find a place in your best 11 for this man, for what he did for the club. So again, some of the goals he scored. I remember a game against Barnsley where he just ripped them apart. he was playing on a different level that day. And he inspired everybody around him as a player and inspired players as a manager. You know, this infectious enthusiasm, this the fact he turned around, let's talk about Rob Lee, for example. He convinced Rob Lee that Newcastle was closer to London than Middlesbrough. You know, that's more than a apocryphal tale. As a player, you know, you see him playing with Beardsley, with Imre Verratti. You know, he just made people around him better in every role he's ever had, be that player or manager. And again, I can't not find a place for him. Having watched him twice, both as a player and then backed him as a manager, you can't not find a room for him in your best 11 for me from my era, you know, from our era, really, Steve.
Yeah, no, definitely. You know, you've got to have him in. Do you know what I mean? He's inspirational on so many different levels. I mean, as you said, as a player, but also, you know, eventually as a manager. And another one, I've already used the same analogy for Rob Lee, but he bleeds black and white, doesn't he?
Absolutely, and can't be denied. That is what he does, and the fact he cared so much is shows in some of the not so good times he had while he was manager or a player. And it was all because he cared. He gave so much heart and soul to the rules. And so for me, you've got to find a place for him. You have to.
Yeah. Okay, mate. That's a great 11. What's your substitute bench and your manager?
Right. First sub, you asked us for 3 subs, which is old school, which is fantastic. And the sub keeper's got to be Budgie, John Burridge. He was the one I was torn between with him and Pav to put in between the sticks from the off. John Burridge was another one. Totally one-off. Mad as a box of frogs, wrapped in a bag of snakes. Out there, doing things way ahead of his time in terms of fitness. Some people would probably pay to watch his warm-ups. It was just ridiculous, some of the stuff he used to do. I gather he went through a phase when he was eating baby food and all sorts of stuff because he was on this sort of fitness kick about staying fit and putting stuff into your body and your matters. And he was a keeper who I heard some people call him a clown. Because, you know, he was one of the first keepers I ever saw be brave enough to come out almost to the edge of the area to close a striker down, you know, and take up body positions that now would be seen as normal, but at the time they were way ahead of it. And obviously I was at Roker Park to see him save that penalty in the playoff semi-final when Paul Hardyman tried to kick his head off after he saved the penalty. And then again, personal thing, come back to here in Dubai. He's been in this region for years. He's done a lot of work with the Omani football team, and he was the person who was behind Al Habsi, the Omani goalkeeper, getting into Premier League level. It was all driven by Budgie. He lived in Dubai for a while. My mate Spugsy out here played football and sat at Park with him for about 10 years. And he says it was never quiet, that's for sure. And I've got to know him a little bit through Joe Morrison, who used to be at NUFC TV, and he now does stuff in the region, football presentation and things like that. And he does work for Facebook's football coverage of La Liga. And fascinating character on and off the pitch, but a really nice guy on and off the pitch as well, and way ahead of his time. And I feel lucky that I grew up with him to watch him as a keeper at my club. I know he's been a keeper at many clubs, but that's just because he wanted his career to go on as long as possible. But he was way, way ahead of his time. There's no doubt about that. And so I, again, had to find, for personal reasons, and there he is with Big Roy, I had to find a place for him on the bench, if nothing else.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Next sub?
Steve Watson. Steve Watson, again, interesting character. I always think of him with 2 other players, Aaron Hughes and Alan Nielsen. players who could play so many different positions that they never were able to make a position their own, and it actually worked against them, which is a shame. You know, I think is Steve Watson the only player we've ever had who's played wearing the numbers 2 to 11,
Yeah.
something like that. He's played in every position, and I know this because he was a few years below me at school. He was also a bloody good goalkeeper, and I think he was a sub goalkeeper technically in 2 or 3 games when he was on the bench. When people could only pick 2 or 3 subs, and he was one of the subs because he also covered a keeper.
Yeah.
I think most people think of him as a right full back. My personal feeling was if he could have been nurtured properly, he would have been an excellent centre back. And people forget in that win we had over Barcelona, the 3-2, he played centre back in that game. Peacock was on the bench. He played centre back and had a hell of a game, And I think that really could and should have been his ultimate position. And because he needed somebody to get hold of him and say, look, Steve, we want to focus on this position for you because he deserved a place in the side, but never seemed to cement one because he was just being moved around and shuttled into positions to cover. I remember him scoring at Anfield when he was playing up front. I think it was that in the League Cup game. And he scored a lovely little chip from about 20 yards. And again, that was a lad who played most of that season at right fullback, and then there he is scoring goals up front. He could do everything. And again, at school, he was 2 or 3 years behind me, but he was playing in my year's team because he was a man as a boy. He really could do anything and everything. And if you're going to have 3 subs and you want somebody who genuinely can cover just about every position on the pitch, there's your man. But that's why he's not in the starting 11 because he's too versatile. It's such a shame. Such a shame. He deserved a run somewhere. And I know he went to Everton and then Villa. But really deserved better because he was a quality player and could do everything. There's no doubt about that. He's one of those players that could do everything.
Yeah, absolutely top class. Great young player as well. Youngest player to make a debut at that time, and
he was doing those daft throw-ins as well, wasn't he? That then got banned because he could chuck the thing half the length of the pitch with that forward roll he used to do with it. It was crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, you got one more sub.
So Les, honestly, I wish we'd had more of him and Shearer together. The decision to sell him was probably one of the worst decisions, but that was only because of the timing of the injury to Alan Shearer. At the time when the deal was made, on the face of it, it looked like a good deal. We were getting decent money for a player coming towards the end of his career. But by God, we could have done with him had we known Shearer's injury was going to happen. As that left poor John Dahl Thomason stranded up front on his own, and he was never designed as a player to play that role. But again, a really lovely guy, somebody who cares, somebody who gets the club and gets the fan base. As a partner with Shearer, was crazily good. Was gracious enough to hand the number 9 shirt to Alan at personal cost, effectively, but he was gracious enough to do it. Somebody I would love back at the club in some sort of capacity off the pitch because he seems to be doing very, very well in his role at QPR. A complete striker. He always seemed to do us when we played against him before we signed him. And then when we got him, gosh, some of the goals he scored were just magnificent. I've never seen somebody able to hang in the air so long once he'd made a jump. And another player that breaks this myth, along with Rob Lee, for example, about the players we love as a fan base don't all have to be Alan Shearer. They don't all have to be Geordies. Malcolm McDonald's another one. London guy, born and bred, but he's ours. And even though he left the club under certain circumstances, Why does he come back and settle here? And why is he still part of our, ongoing support and commentary of Newcastle United? Because we love him and he loves us. And so Les is exactly the same. It's a misnomer that we don't like Cockneys. It's a misnomer that we don't want anybody from outside of the region. Good God, if you come and wear that shirt with the pride that we would wear it and honour it the way we would honour it, we will love you till their dying day and beyond. And Les Ferdinand epitomises that. As somebody who wasn't at the club for a massive amount of time, but he got it, and we got it, and we got along together. And again, somebody you've spent time with, and you know what his feelings are about the club. So again, another one that I had to try and squeeze in somewhere. But if you're looking for options from the bench, I don't think you've got better than Steve Watson and Les Ferdinand.
No, fantastic, mate. Fantastic. So, the big question is, who is your manager? Who is going to manage this fantastic dream team?
There's part of us wanted to say Kevin as player manager because of, again, everything we've already discussed. But again, I can't not find room to have Sir Bobby in there. And that would be my manager. I wish he had come straight after Kevin. I think the outcome for the club long term would have been such a different thing. But I'm also grateful that we got him when we did. And he turned the situation round that was not good. He was everything we could have hoped him to be and more. And also respect him for everything he did at other clubs and on the international stage. He's a manager who's respected not just regionally, not just nationally, but internationally. The amount of people who get gooey-eyed when they're talking about Sir Bobby. He's touched so many people in football across the entire modern football world. There are managers who still now look up to him. Managers who've won all sorts of trophies and all sorts of things, and yet come back to this man. Sometimes is the reason that they're even doing it. And I'm not just talking about Mourinho and Pep Guardiola. You've got so many others as well that he seems to have had this influence over in football. And again, he's one of ours. And he was one of ours. And deserved a better ending than he had. And deserved better from some of the players who disrespected him and who now will scramble and tell you that they didn't. But we know what happened at the time. And we won't forget. And I certainly don't forget that he deserved a lot more. He deserved a lot more from some of those players. Deserved a lot more from us as a fan base for one season, for sure, at the end of it. And most certainly deserved more than he got at the end of his time here. That phrase about not wanting to be the man that shot Bambi. No, you didn't shoot Bambi. What you did was you bludgeoned him with a club and then let him bleed out slowly. And that was horrendous. It was a terrible way to treat him at the end. But equally, some of my best times supporting Newcastle United as an adult have been watching Sir Bobby's teams. And I can't take that away, can't take the joy away. I can't take the amount of players who we had who loved to talk about him, even players who didn't necessarily succeed here or didn't have the best of times here. Even if you listen to somebody like, we get on beIN Sports out here, we get Didier Domi on quite a lot. And Didier Domi, he didn't finish his career at Newcastle United under the best of circumstances. But he still waxes lyrical about Sir Bobby when he gets the opportunity to. When you've got Mourinho talking about him and then he's backing it up on the screen, it just shows the amount of people in football that man touched. And he's one of us. And for a short period of time, he was our manager. And I just wish we'd had him earlier. And I think he would get the best out of that 11 that I've picked that you could ever imagine.
Yeah, got to agree with you, mate. What a fantastic lineup there that Neil's gone for. Cernacek in goal, Venison at right back, Killer and Woodgate centre halves, Frank Clark at left back, Aiken just sitting in front of them, Rob Lee and Ginola on the right and left respectively, with Peter Beardsley just sitting in behind Alan Shearer and Kevin Keegan, and all managed by Sir Bobby Robson, and quite a healthy bench as well, with the likes of Steve Watson and of course Les Ferdinand on there as well, with John Burridge and Bobby Robson managing. Perfect team. Great stuff, Neil, and thanks for being the first to do this. We're going to get a few more of the regulars over the course of the next couple of weeks, just as little fillers in for Christmas, mate. But great stuff, mate.
I'll be interested to see how other people's teams work out and why, because like I say, all of these things are there's personal reasons for it usually. I could have chucked another 11 together with equally heartfelt thoughts and feelings. So I'll be interested to see which way other people go with it and what eras they have, because it's also always difficult to get players from different eras together, and it's difficult to compare. So this should be a fascinating set of little programs over the festive period, which would be good fun.
No, fantastic. Great stuff, mate. I'll let you go back to your beer and celebrating 3 points against West Brom.
Magic.
Take care, mate.
Nice to see you, pal.
Bye-bye.
Ta-da.
Talking to myself again.